Hello, friend. I can't recall the exact moment I first faced rejection. Maybe it was the day I raised my hand to join a group of kids on the elementary school playground, only to be turned away as if I were invisible. Or perhaps it was when I submitted a scholarship application and saw my name struck off the list with no explanation. It could also have been the time I confessed my feelings to my first crush, only to receive a gentle head shake and the words, "I'm not ready yet." Whatever the instance, the feeling was the same, as if the whole world was saying, "You're not good enough to be chosen." We grow up carrying these small wounds. They don't bleed, no one sees them, but they hurt. They hurt deeply. And the scariest part isn't the rejection itself, it's when we start to believe we deserve it. That we're not as smart as others. Not as attractive as others. Not as important as others. And then we live like outsiders, always waiting for someone to open a door, always waiting for someone to pick us. But then comes a day when the pain grows big enough, when the silence runs deep enough, that we're forced to wake up. Not to blame anyone, but to ask ourselves, can I choose my life again? Not waiting for someone to pick me. Not needing anyone to grant me permission. Can I choose for myself? This video is for that day. The day you choose yourself again. For a long time in my life, I lived as if I were just a backup option. At work, I gave my all, but my efforts were only noticed after someone else got the praise. In relationships, I was the one always texting first, worrying first, and receiving silence in return. In my family, I was never the smartest kid, nor the one who made my parents proud. I was just like a background character in someone else's story. I used to think it was because I wasn't good enough. So I tried harder. I pushed myself to study relentlessly, worked until I was exhausted, changed my personality to be more approachable, happier, easier to get along with, just hoping to be chosen, to be loved, to be seen. But the more I tried, the more I felt something slipping away. I started losing sight of who I was. I no longer knew what I truly wanted, what I liked, or how I felt. Each day, I lived like an actor playing the lead in someone else's life, while my own life remained on hold. Then one day, I faced rejection. A rejection more striking than the others. I was dropped from a project I'd spent months preparing for, simply because my boss chose someone more familiar. I forced a smile, hid my emotions, and said, "It's okay," as I always did. But when I got home, I broke down in tears. It wasn't because I wasn't used to rejection. It was because I began to realize I had been complicit in it. I had let others choose for me for too long. I allowed them to decide my worth, instead of doing it myself. From that moment, I started reflecting on every rejection in my life. And I discovered something strange. Some rejections were actually blessings in disguise. In the next part, I'll share those rejections that, looking back, turned out to be opportunities to redirect my life for the better, though at the time, they were filled with hurt and confusion. The first time I failed to land a job at a company I'd dreamed of since my senior year of college, I thought my world had collapsed. I'd prepared for the interview for 3 months, researched every detail of the company culture, and even imagined the outfit I'd wear on my first day. But after the final round, I received a curt email. "Thank you for applying. We regret to inform you, those words are familiar to anyone who's job hunted, but the sting when they're aimed at you never gets easier." I didn't leave my house for 2 days. My mom casually asked, "What's the big deal, honey?" I didn't know how to make her understand. To me, that failure felt like someone was telling me straight to my face, "You're not good enough for your own dream." But a month later, I got an opportunity at a smaller firm, far from the city center. I took it, partly because I had no other options. Little did I know, that place gave me creative freedom, real-world experience, and bosses who truly believed in me. From a spot I felt forced into, I found myself. 3 years later, I became the youngest leader on the team. Only then did I dare to look back at that slammed door from years ago and feel grateful it didn't open. Had it opened, I might have been trapped in a race that didn't suit me, a workplace that wasn't mine, and perhaps I still wouldn't know who I am. The same goes for the time the person I loved walked away. They left without a word, leaving a silence that lingered for months. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, and existed like a ghost. At the time, I believed my heart would never heal. But you know what? Without that shock, I wouldn't have learned to be alone, to love myself more, and I'd never have dared to write these words. I realized, many rejections don't mean I'm unworthy. They mean something better is waiting ahead, something I truly need, not just something I cling to. The problem is, we don't see that in the moment. We only feel the loss. Only the disappointment. We don't realize that sometimes, those cracks let the light in. After enough rejections, in my career, in love, in relationships I thought were solid, I began to wonder, was I born to belong nowhere? That was a bitter question. But it also led me to a realization I'd never dared to consider. Perhaps I'd been living a life shaped by others' standards, and rejection was a quiet liberation. I remember once, during an interview, the person across the table glanced at my resume and asked, "Why didn't you stick to your major? This might make people think you lack focus." I smiled and replied, "I think living true to myself is harder than sticking to a field." Those words slipped out unplanned. But they made me think deeper. Who sets the standards of right and wrong for my life? Who has the right to choose for me? The honest answer was, I had handed that power to others. No one truly forced me. I silently agreed every time someone else chose for me, labeling it rejection when it didn't fit. But what if I changed that? What if I stopped waiting to be chosen? What if I chose myself, regardless of who agreed? When I posed that question, everything began to shift. Not the world itself, but how I faced it. I stopped tying my value to others' reactions. I stopped seeing a closed door as an end. I started to understand. Sometimes, rejection is a map guiding me to realize I'm not in the right place, with the right people, or at the right opportunity. And when I truly paused, looking deeply at what I'd been through, I noticed something odd. Too many times, I shrank back, fearing more rejection. Too many times, I gave up before starting, accustomed to not being welcomed. I took time to write down things I'd always wanted to do but set aside out of fear. Fear of being laughed at. Fear of judgment. Fear of not being chosen. One of those was writing. I used to love writing. But after flunking an English class in college, I convinced myself I wasn't capable. Now, I picked up the pen again. Not to prove anything to anyone, but to remind myself I still have the right to choose what I love. I also began reevaluating my relationships. Some people I'd clung to out of fear of emptiness. But I forgot, someone who doesn't choose you won't see you fully, no matter how long you stay. Your presence can't make someone value you if they don't want to. So why not step back and let yourself choose? I once thought choosing myself was selfish, that I was being arrogant to think I deserved more. But gradually I learned, choosing myself isn't selfishness, it's self-respect. It's knowing your worth and refusing half-hearted treatment. It's daring to reject pity and waiting for respect. It's saying, I'm not perfect, but I'm enough. And because of that, you have the right to choose what brings you peace, happiness, and a life true to yourself. I slowly learned to walk again. This time, not to chase anything, not to impress anyone, but to get closer to myself. I realized life doesn't have to be a non-stop climb. Sometimes it's a winding path, getting lost, then coming back. And what matters isn't how many times you're rejected, but whether you dare to choose yourself again. In the next part, I'll take you deeper into an inner growth journey, where the storyteller not only learns to choose again but also begins to forgive, let go, and accept themselves after all they've been through. Forgiveness used to be a word that annoyed me. I thought it meant weakness. Letting someone walk over me, cause pain, then leave without accountability. I believed holding on to anger was self-protection. But I was wrong. There were nights I couldn't sleep, replaying a harsh comment from years ago. Times I fell into an invisible void thinking about someone who hurt me, even though they were long gone. Turns out, I wasn't angry at them anymore, I was mad at myself for letting it happen. And the deepest pain wasn't the hurt itself, but not forgiving myself. I started writing unsent letters. A letter to a friend who betrayed me. A letter to a boss who dismissed my efforts. A letter to someone I loved deeply but who didn't love me back. And finally, a long letter to the me from back then, who tried so hard to please the world and forgot myself. In each letter, I didn't aim for perfection. I let myself be honest. Cry honestly. Feel chaotic, confused, even angry. But as the words softened, so did my heart. I realized, forgiveness isn't for others' peace, it's for my own. I didn't forget the wounds. I still recall days I felt so small I wanted to disappear. But now, instead of shoving them into the dark, I choose to live with them. They're part of me, a part that was once fragile, but also taught me strength in a very real way. Living with them doesn't mean clinging to the pain. It means being grateful it came, teaching me lessons no textbook could. It's accepting that not everything broken needs fixing. Some things just need to be acknowledged and set down. I gradually learned, happiness isn't about never getting hurt again, it's choosing to keep going despite the hurt. I still face rejection, new opportunities, new people. But now, I don't crumble when it happens. I look in the mirror and tell myself, it's okay. I've gotten through it before. And I'll get through this too. I choose to stay with myself. And that choice is what changes everything. I can't say I've fully overcome or reached the end. The truth is, I'm still on the journey. There are mornings I wake up feeling empty. Moments I wonder if I'm on the right path. But the biggest difference is I'm no longer swept away by rejection, judgment, or outside looks. Because now, I know who I am, and I choose to stay with that person. From someone who once saw themselves as worthless, backup plan, the one always picked last or cut from the game. I've learned to stand up, look life in the eye, and say, thank you for not choosing me. Because of that, I learned to choose myself. You see, rejection isn't the end. Rejection is just a redirection, sometimes inward, where you face the rawest truths about yourself. Where you realize, if no one is patting your back, cheering you on, or walking with you, you still have yourself. And you are the most important person you need to learn to accept, love, and trust. If you're feeling left behind, hurt, or unsteady after failures or rejections, pause for a moment. Don't force yourself to seem strong. And don't rush to forget. Sit down and ask yourself a simple question. If I had nothing left to lose, what would I choose? The answer might lead you back to yourself, where you once forgot, once denied, once undervalued, but also the only place where you can start again. Life isn't a selection contest. You don't need anyone's approval to be your whole self. You just need to choose yourself. Every day. Even if you're broken, even if you're rebuilding. I've chosen. And I believe you can too. You don't need the world's applause. You just need your heart's agreement. If you see yourself in the story, know you're not alone. My story might be part of yours too. And though our paths differ, I believe, anyone who dares to move forward from pain will eventually arrive where they belong. From rejection to choosing your own life, that's a journey of tears, but also of freedom. Hello, you who are stepping through the shadows. May you always remember, you are enough. And you have the right to live a life of your own choosing.